recorded at the Kitchen Studios. This is the Pencil Pushers Podcast.
So this is not someone putting out a piece to make a buck. It's not someone putting out a piece to last forever. It's someone wanting to make a statement, share a part of their life and their soul with everybody else. And everybody out there brings it in. And I think that's a very selfless act, and I really enjoy that.
Welcome, Leadheads. My name is Mike Rosado, and this is the Pencil Pushers Podcast. We have a super special episode where we talk to some of the top up-and-coming street artists working today. Here, my producer Max Trujillo and I travel to Greensboro, North Carolina, where something very unique is being created by a man named Marty Kotis. Marty is a successful real estate developer and entrepreneur who, over the years, has almost single-handedly turned a small urban town in the middle of North Carolina into a thriving cultivator for public art. What once was simply a small way to get large-scale painted works on the walls of his downtown buildings has turned into a concerted, passionate effort to support this once demonized art form with a space to build skill and camaraderie amongst their peers. This project, if you will, is called Kotis Street Art. And the space that Marty has created to nurse the project is nothing short of a pure, unadulterated artist haven. Nestled in an old horse's stable is essentially a massive, renovated artist studio filled with giant blank canvases to riff, experiment, and hang, multiple rooms and beds for traveling artists to stay, brand new kitchen and living room, a gym, basketball court, game room. I mean, it's got it all. It's sick. Marty's vision is in full bloom as he invites numerous artists to stay for an inaugural private opening, and we were lucky enough to bask in the moment. So let's give an auditory peek into what this place is all about as Max and I kick up a chat with Raman, a recent transplant from India and an uber-talented artist. Take a listen, and I hope you enjoy.
And I painted this wall with this gigantic head of a fireman with his mask and all. There are flames going in the back, and there are these firemen who are not here to rescue. They are here to burn your books. And I kind of played around with something like a Jackson Pollock feel. It was a very cold weather when I was painting, so I think flames kept me warm. Someone told me that Greensboro now is the top 10 US cities for murals, and that I think all thanks to Marty, that he brings all these great artists from like Australia, England, Switzerland, or America, everywhere. And so when these great artists come to Greensboro, like everyone's watching it.
Yeah.
2 years ago or 3 years ago, there weren't as many murals here, and now when you see so many murals growing and people, they have something to do, it kind of gives them pride. And I've heard so many stories because I'm painting outside. People stop, they take pictures, they make videos, and they tell me like how their relatives, when they visit them. So it's kind of a good tour to go around, and that gives them a great like sense of achievement to everyone.
So Max, I mean, firstly, like just amazing just hanging out with you, going there as a non-artist. I mean, how did you feel about meeting these artists before we even really got a chance to talk to Marty?
Yeah, man, being one that never puts a paintbrush to canvas or spray paint to wall, I'm a fish out of water, but I'm a lover of art. And so just watching all of this happening at various moments, like literally a beehive of activity, it was truly a unique experience. So I really appreciated what was happening.
It was cool to talk to Raman as an individual artist, but then also getting some context into what Marty was doing and how that became a thing for him, and how the interrelationship between the artist and the commissioner, essentially. So
I think it's important because most artists aren't independently wealthy. So if they're going to do any type of art, they need to be commissioned in some respect. And most of the artists that we've talked to in the past, it's a job if they get hired to do something other than when it's like truly the love of it. And in this scenario, it's kind of like they get their cake and eat it too, because they're being commissioned to put up art, but they're also just being left to their own devices to do whatever they can do.
Speaking of commissioned, let's get to the commissioner component, and let's hear from Marty Kotis and find out a little bit more about how he even came to the place of starting Kotis Street Art.
20, 30 years ago, I was focused on real estate development and changing the city and the landscape through the buildings I was building. But it's like building this space out without artwork. I can build a really pretty place, really pretty building, but the artwork adds a whole new dimension. It adds more soul to it, and color, and vibrancy, and more current perspective than just what I do out there. And it's so fast. You can change it, it can move with the environment. I really like it. A lot of my projects will take 10 years, 20 years. And a street art project can take 10 days, 5 days, and change something completely. And the people in the city are like, wow, that's incredible. And the way they interact with it, connect with it, is incredible. It's something I thrive off of now. I'm like, wow, that's like, want more of that, want more to change the energy in the city.
And street art in particular, what was it that drove you, basically what you're talking about?
The scale is one part. It's huge. I mean, you take this canvas, if I took any one of these canvases and stuck it out on the side of the building, it wouldn't do anything. But street art is massive scale. Yeah. It's public. Anybody can see it anytime they want. It's not tucked away in a gallery. It's out there for everyone to enjoy.
Confronting.
Yeah, confronting them. Whether or not they want to see it, they see it. But also, they don't have to pay a fee to go see it. It's not tucked away in a gallery where someone feels like they've got to dress a certain way or act a certain way when they go in to see it. And I really like that. And it's a selfless expression where you're saying, I'm not putting, and it's ephemeral too. It's 10 years or so. So this is not someone putting out a piece to make a buck. It's not someone putting out a piece to last forever. It's someone wanting to make a statement, share part of their life and their soul with everybody else. And everybody out there brings it in. And I think that's a very selfless act, and I really enjoy that.
We spoke with Chuck Barrett, a painter originally from Salt Lake City, now living in Miami, with fellow artist Nicole Selgar. This recording took place only days after Kobe Bryant's passing, so the topic of an artist's need to represent significant moments in pop culture was brought up.
There's obviously an opportunity when somebody who's an influential and iconic figure in the public zeitgeist passes away, that they should be memorialized by those who, those who care about them. However, I do think that oftentimes it might be a little overdone. The day after Nelson Mandela died, it was right in the dead middle of Art Basel, though, and literally the next day, I mean, half the muralists had changed their theme and were painting portraits of Nelson Mandela. And it was just like a complete oversaturation of Nelson Mandela, and a lot of it was like, I have a hard time believing that many people all just truly had this heartfelt connection to Nelson Mandela, because a lot of them were American graffiti artists who might not even know who he was. But maybe I could be completely wrong. Same thing with David Bowie, same thing with, you can fill in the blank, but anytime somebody passes away, it does seem to be kind of like a race to be the first person to make that iconic portrait of them. And I want to hope that it's all well intentioned, but it does seem slightly opportunistic from time to time. As far as the Kobe thing goes, there's a lot of controversy surrounding him as an individual and his history.
Is that part of the reason why you push against it a little bit?
Well, for me personally, I just don't watch basketball, so it would be a little hypocritical for me to paint someone who I didn't really have a connection to in even regardless of how abstract that connection may be. But with that being said, that would make me apprehensive.
At that point, do you stop writing about Pablo Picasso? Do you stop writing about all these other artists who have?
I think you do, because they're dead. Yeah, I think you stop talking about Picasso finally, because why are we still talking about him? There's living artists. There's people that are starving who are great painters, and Pablo Picasso is dead, and he made his millions, and his estate will forever be legendary.
Right. Actually, Marty Kotis put up on social media one time and made me think. and I hadn't had this thought before, maybe it's a commonly shared phrase, but he said, support living artists because dead artists' money go to people that had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So if you want to really say you're a lover and supporter of the arts, give it an actual living artist a chance.
Yeah, an article about Picasso, that just really helps the investors who collected his work and bought it as a monetary device to someday possibly sell for more money.
Yeah.
That doesn't do anything for the culture.
The conversation continued on the topic of pop culture as a subject matter for their work. Miami muralist Nicole Selgar weighs in on the balance of memorializing icons who clearly have made an impact on the modern zeitgeist despite having well-known sordid pasts.
I still think it's important to bring attention to those masters, but I think it's more important to bring attention to living artists as well. Yeah, I mean, Picasso is amazing, sure. So is Leonardo da Vinci and a whole bunch of other super, even older masters, but there's a lot of people right now that are living and that are on some next level situation, and nobody's paying attention to them.
Yeah, but I guess the question, though, is at what point do you separate, or is there no separation whatsoever, of the artists themselves and the work that they produced from the actions that they actually did in their own personal lives?
I guess it depends, right? Because, for instance, Kevin Spacey as an actor. He's an amazing actor. I'm not going to take that away from him, but the things that he's done are absolutely horrible. You can just go as far as Michael Jackson, and there's a whole bunch of other celebrity people that have done horrible things. Supposedly Pablo Picasso was also a woman beater too. There's can't take away of the talent of these people, but sure, it changes your perception of them. I'm not going to go out and paint a portrait of Michael Jackson after, knowing everything that I know, but there are people that still really look up to him and love his music, so I'm not saying that the attention should be taken away, but you can't, pretend that didn't happen.
Right. I like a lot of, not just artists, but filmmakers, actors, whatever, who probably do have an awful past. I like their work, especially, I grew up listening to a lot of punk rock and heavy metal. I was really into the Norwegian black metal scene. I don't agree with the politics or ideals of most people in that situation, but I do appreciate the art. I do appreciate what they created, and I appreciate the effect that it had on the culture, whether that be negative or positive. It was impactful, and therefore I think it was meaningful. But yeah, I don't think you should deify artists by any means, because they're obviously people who make mistakes. They're just creating something, and it's no different than being a person who creates cars or architecture or anything else, And so there are creators are human beings, and so some of them are going to be good and some of them are going to be awful, and there's probably most of them will be somewhere in between that.
So that was a perfect example of the kinds of conversations we were having throughout the night while we were snaking from one scene to the other.
But it wasn't all super intense. It was also kind of wild and silly and fun too. You got yourself tied up into a 15-minute barn bombing?
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah, something apparently I had never heard of before. But basically what it is that it is 15-minute intervals of artists going into a room and just spray painting whatever idea they had at the top of their head.
So I grabbed the recorder right before you went out. You had just gone to the inventory room and grabbed your colors that you were going to paint with.
It was basically a trailer filled with spray cans.
And I asked you where you were at that point. This is your mindset at the time.
I've never done spray paint art before, so it's going to be completely new, completely unhinged, but it's kind of like, as a drummer myself, when I see a drum circle, I have to participate. So there's spray painting going on, there's art going on, and I want to participate. So let's see what happens.
And this next conversation is the culmination of probably 5 or 6 hours of a pretty amazing night filled with lots of conversations, lots of live artwork. We got to sit down with 3 or 4 of the main artists that were basically staying there in residence, and also Marty Kotis. How did you feel about this?
What a day. We got there in the afternoon and were led around. We started meeting new artists and interviewed different people throughout the afternoon, just shaking hands and
we had that amazing meal, which was fantastic.
Great food, great beer, just good conversation with everyone. an absolutely fantastic time. I mean, hell, Mike, you and I, we're sitting in our studio right now and we're editing this piece. We've taken our time to edit this because this was a really important and different aspect of the Pencil Pushers podcast. It's not something that we normally do. Normally, it's only your voice that's speaking, and here I am talking on the microphone. But it was cool because it really did open up the whole spectrum of what we're doing on the show, and that's to highlight artists and showcase like different avenues of how an artist can actually live in this world and even make a buck by doing it and make this their profession.
Well, one of the great things about this experience was that we actually got to witness artists in their element.
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons why I found that experience to be so fulfilling. And if I was able to bring everybody who's listening to this podcast episode to that event, I would absolutely do it because it was such a special moment. It's definitely going to be something that I'm going to remember for a very long time. But it was great to just get together with everybody at the end of the night who were still there. And that was basically Marty and about 3 or 4 other artists.
Yeah. I grabbed the recorder because we started having great conversation.
Yeah.
Just asked everybody, do you mind if I just record what we're saying? Because this is interesting. And really, like, the next 10 minutes or so of this podcast is just kind of a full, like, unedited version of just our finish to the night. I wanted to cut it more, but really we just were talking about fun, interesting, and insightful things about the life of a street artist.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a listen.
And I think it's like this Dracula sucking the blood out of the artist, but it's kind of like, you know, it's just this energy that's feeding you, and you're like, oh wow, you feel very inspired. So I always feel inspired being around artistic people.
This environment that Marty's given us is just so amazing that we have this great facility, all these materials just given to us to be able to express ourselves. It's the best kind of situation to create.
To talk about like why this is so different than like your classic art studio where you already have like 10 to 15 other artists that are hanging around, where you have the possibility of something like that happening.
Well, I think if you're renting, let's say in Miami, if you're renting an art studio and you're sharing it with even 4 or 5 other people, odds are in a given amount of time, like, things are going to conflict with one another. Somebody wants the lights off. Somebody needs to use a projector. Somebody needs to do this and this and that. Somebody's wasted with their friends and brought them over, and like using it as a party space all of a sudden. Like, there's a whole lot of things that can happen in that scenario. But I think that the whole fact that you have to wake up and drive there is probably the biggest thing. You have to wake up and actually like, okay, there's other things I need to do. I have laundry, I've got this, I got that. I got to get up, I got to go to the studio. Hopefully no one's there. Maybe they are. It'll be cool if so-and-so's there, but I hope not this guy's there, whatever. And like, all those factors are kind of out the window because like, we're all here, like we're making food with each other, like we're eating breakfast together. We're like, hanging out all night. Every time somebody has the slightest hang up on like an idea or a concept, there's 4 other people like, what if you did this? What if you did that? And all of a sudden the idea just like gets fleshed out like in the moment right there and then, and it's like a beautiful thing. Like you don't have to really think for it. And it's like Nicole and I live together, and I have like, maybe I'm the most fortunate person because I have like another artist living with me, but sometimes that also feels like an inhibitor because we're both stuck in the same rut sometimes. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that doesn't always work, but like, you get 4 or 5 people in the same living space who are all trying to produce every day, trying to do their best work, trying to do their most impressive work. And last thing you want to do is half-ass it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you're going to bring your A game whether you had that intention or not, because you're like, I'm surrounded by people who I respect so much. Last thing I'm going to do is like do a bad job on anything.
Is that pretty much how y'all feel too?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, honestly, like coming here, I had no idea what to expect. Here, Marty's given us the opportunity to kind of shine and show people that, there's merit to spray paint street art. There's merit to forms of art that most people would consider taboo, sort of like tattoos or anything else. And it's really cool that we can beautify an environment, we can turn a building into something completely brand new and exceptional just by way of painting it. And I think that's a really cool idea that he's just launched off of and just taken to the next level.
Like with comedy, you and I were talking about this before, like a comedy club allows all of these comedians to come in and just work and like hone on their craft.
Work up
and it's like
slug it out, yeah.
But then they're doing it, and other comedians are there too, and they're kind of seeing and they're almost critiquing each other. Like, then it's funnier the next night.
You just hit on the head, man. It's like when, like, for example, we're talking today, like, shit artists see which no one else sees. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can pick your own shit apart all day long. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And having someone else pick it apart with you and go like, but at the end of the day, you know what I mean? It's me and you doing this kind of stuff, and we're doing it for each other at the end of the extensively.
And you guys are like if you're gonna critique Damien's stuff, you're like, I'm trying to make Damien see what Damien normally sees. Like, not like
No, actually, I'm trying to see what Damien doesn't see in his own work, and he does it likewise. You know, there's I'll do a piece that I'm like, oh, that looks good, and then Damien will come and be like, all right, this one part, it's kind of throwing me off, and I'll be like, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all are collectively trying to make each other better. We're not competing, and that's really important.
This is the art of favor right now. In 10 years, people might like lamps. You know what I mean? Like, nothing wrong with lamps.
I love lamp.
Absolutely.
I love lamp too. Lamp's great.
I like lamp.
But, make hay while the sun shines. We're all here doing it. Get into it. You know what I mean? Go hard where you can.
Damien, speak to the physicality of painting the entire front of that barn.
Look,
Night one.
it hurts, man. Like, you're up all day long and you're running up and down lifts and, getting shit done. But,
because you painted for about straight 8 hours today with like a paint run at one point. Mm-hmm. But basically, you were physically moving and covering an entire building for the better half of a day.
Yeah. But I'm not look. If I was a builder and I was building all day, and I was had this, say if I liked painting and was building, I wouldn't come home and go like, oh, what a great day. You know what I mean? Like I came home beat today. Yeah. I can barely hold my eyes open right now, but I'm smiling.
Right.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, we were talking earlier about how street art in particular, you do these large scale pieces, and it reminds me so much of it's basically the modern day fresco painters,
For sure.
And you talking about that makes me think about that classic story about Michelangelo when he's doing the Sistine Chapel, how he's basically broken by the end of it.
For sure. Well, he's also using extremely rustic, primitive tools,
and he's upside down,
and he's under the pressure of
The church.
a million and one hierarchies that are looking.
Yeah.
At this point, he's like a blue collar, contractor at that point. And he's got the church, he's got the crown, he's got a lot of people looking at him. That's a pressure I would never.
And they've seen art over the years how they want to see it, so he's trying to kind of fit into
a vision of what they want it to
into
say,
a category,
and
but
he better hit it on the head.
Yeah.
And that's a whole world of pressure. I can't even imagine that.
We're painting pretty pictures on walls.
Right. Well, here's the thing about public art, street art, graffiti art. There's a lot of different words you can use, and I personally am. I don't call myself a street artist. I don't even call myself an artist. I call myself a painter, because I feel like art is, to call me an artist, that's up to the person who's looking at it. That's not up to me. I'm a painter. That's my craft. That's what I know how to do. I do know how to paint. I don't necessarily know that I'm an artist. Somebody else might find me to be an artist when they see something that impacts them, and that's beautiful, and that's what I want. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to call myself that because it's audacious. I think that the one thing that the fine art world lost somewhere in the mid-century, we got away from classical painting, we got away from the classical master style, everything needs to be realistic, you do an underpainting, it's all oils, blah, 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 glazing techniques, whatnot. And then you had you had your Pollocks, and you had your people like that come along, and they switched up the game. But it was an isolated endeavor for all of them. They may have had a community. If you lived in New York City in the 1960s, you may have had a community of painters that you were friends with, you shared a studio with, stuff like that. But rarely did you show together, rarely did you work together. Street artists, graffiti artists, public artists, we collaborate all the time because our whole entire thing is like, look, we got a 30-foot wall. You take half, I take half. Let's make it look good. Let's find a way to make this work together. What colors are you using? What are you going to do? So what if I did this and I mixed that with that? And then you encourage one another. You both want each other to be great, because if one person sucks, then your shit doesn't, it might look great, but it's also the better half of a shitty wall. And you don't want to be the better half of a shitty wall. You want to be part of that amazing wall where it's like, dude, those two guys murdered that shit. And so there's a true community at this point with and there's always going to be a bastardized version of everything, but like with whatever you want to call what we're doing, I feel like that it's much more of a rustic, true grassroots kind of vibe, like we're just real ass people. Like we all have blue collar jobs. We all have we have a background of that. We're not like fine art academic painters. We're people that grew up drawing, reading comic books, watching anime, whatever it may be that influenced us to become artists or whatever it may be. Like that thing, whatever it is, like that's what draws us together. Like I have a background in listening to punk rock, and Ben is from New York City, and he comes from like listening to Wu-Tang and shit like that, and but that jives. Like it just, we get each other because it's one side of the same coin. Like I'm just on the flip side of that, but like we're all very similar. Same with being from Wagga Wagga in Australia. And I can identify with Damien on so many levels because I'm from fucking Salt Lake, Utah, which is farmland out in the middle of nowhere. Everybody thinks it's a bunch of Mormons and shit, and just like it's it is what it is. But I
never would have guessed that.
But that's the thing is like, but I can also meet somebody who's a street artist from Rio in Brazil. Yeah. And for whatever reason, we can find these like factors that really identify with one another. And I think it just speaks to let's get back to really what this is all about. It's not about how much value you can put on something after I'm dead. It's like, I don't give a shit about that stuff. Like, I think that let's make something awesome. And how many fine artists get an opportunity to paint a 30 by 90 foot canvas? How many fine artists have a studio that can accommodate a 25 foot long canvas? It's very, like, where in the world are you going to find that? Yeah. Walls are where you make, right. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you can go to the Guggenheim right now, and I dare you to find a 30 foot long painting. It's like, for the most part, it's gonna, and it's like,
I think if it was in that if it was out, like, I think this kind of art breaks the frame a little bit, bit, and like it can take you by surprise. You can walk around a corner and have something, it could be political, it could be whatever, but it's like it's there. You know what I mean? For better or for worse.
Yeah. It can also be on the floor. It can be on the ceiling. It can be anywhere, and it can be anything. And somebody could paint over it in a heartbeat. That's what makes it valuable, and they should. Absolutely. I think that street art should always be respected as a temporary thing. And you should respect it because God only knows how long it's going to be there.
Woo! Man, that was a jam-packed, amazing episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. A big, huge thanks to the great artists that we got a chance to hang out with and talk to, including Damian Mitchell, Aerosol Kingdom, Nicole Selgar, Chuck, Gina Franco, Jenna Rice, Doug Kaysen, Ben Ngotti, and anybody else that we did not mention. Do check them out on Instagram. And that's pretty much it, folks. We will see you here again soon. Thanks. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Pencil Pushers Podcast. Follow us on Instagram at the Pencil Pushers Podcast for visual representation of our guest artwork, topics discussed, and anything else that contributes to the show. So be sure to subscribe. Tell a friend. Tell lots and lots of friends. Become a leadhead. And we're out.